Hello, Jason here from Norcal Karters, and this video is how to install or remove a throttle cable. And in this case, we're using the Mikuni 28mm Carburetor. And I have similar videos to this, but I don't go into this much detail. So first of all, again, this is the Mikuni 28mm Carburetor, very common on the Honda CR80s and other racing applications. And I have everything completely apart on the throttle assembly. So I will assemble it when I'm done putting the cable in, but I wanted to show you how everything worked. So here you have the cable holder. Cable holder screws into the slide. So if you ever want to make a needle adjustment, that'll be a different video. The needle, the clip are underneath this cable holder. These two screws hold the cable holder into the slide, and everything's kind of indexed or shaped. So you'll notice a D shape, D shape. The D shapes must match. And you don't need monkey force to tighten these screws. Just gently set them. And you also want to make sure you have the correct screwdriver so you don't strip out the tops. So basically how the cables stay in place on these carburetors, I'm going to do it two different ways. You have the barrel end. You have a slot inside the cable holder. This will be inside the slide. See how that cable drops right in the slot? There's two different sizes there. So you need to get the barrel in the bigger end and then pull up, and then it will stay captive right there. So that's how it's going to work on the inside. Now, there's a lot of cables available out there. If you don't know what you're buying, deal with a reputable shop, preferably a local shop. I'm in Northern California. I send a lot of the engine customers to SweetTech. Full disclosure, I worked there for 15 years. So that's one of the reasons. Plus, they usually have all these little correct parts for the different engine stuff. So if you end up with one of these style cables, it's not going to fit. Don't spend 3 hours trying to whittle this down to fit. Because a lot of times what will happen is you're going to ruin the integrity of that barrel, and eventually this $3-4 part or whatever it cost, first off, it's wrong. Second off, it's going to cost you a race. You'll be leading a race and that thing's going to pop off. Now I don't know if that's ever going to cause any damage to the engine, but if the slide doesn't open, then you're not going anywhere. So buy the correct parts. So again, preferably deal with a local reputable vendor. If you have to go online, make sure the online shop provides service and can answer your questions. Otherwise, again, find a shop that is knowledgeable. So back to the cable itself. That is how it works. So it goes into that slot there. Now we're going to put everything together. And one of these days I'll get good at editing and I'll do fast forwards and everything else. Or if you'd like to donate your time to Norcal Karters to do that editing for me, I'm not going to say no. So those screws go right in there. And again, it's just, you want them snug. It does help to have a magnetic tip screwdriver. So you could probably fast forward a couple seconds here, or look at the little preview screen here on YouTube. So, and you want to take your time till you get the feel. You don't want to strip those out. If you strip those out, then next time you need to remove those is going to be not as fun. Okay, so the cable holder is installed inside the slide. You'll notice this yellow retainer. They're usually yellow or green depending on the year, but yellow or green on the Mikunis. And on a lot of carburetors, since we're talking about the throttle cable, some carburetor tops will have a 90-degree angle, and I personally don't like those on go-karts, but if you're on an ATV or a motorcycle or something like that, that's fine for clearance issues. But we like to run a larger loop in the top just to reduce the friction. You want a cable housing that fits inside that cap right there. That's actually the cable adjuster is what it's technically called, but you want it to fit inside. And you also want to check if your carburetor has a rubber boot on the top. Carburetors move air and fuel. So if you have air coming in through the carburetor top, it could and likely will affect the way the carburetor operates. So the rubber boots are designed to make an airtight fit on the top of the cap, and the cable housing that I showed you earlier goes through the rubber boot. So I'll get this whole assembly together for you. Now bear with me. I normally do this on a go-kart where it has a spring tension on the cable. So I might botch this up a few times, but we'll see. So what we're going to do, rubber boot over the housing. And if you don't have a rubber boot, you could also use a piece of fuel line with some sort of either a small zip tie or a safety wire around the cap to seal it. And then here in a few months, we're actually going to do a whole cart buildup. So I will actually go through all the details on throttle cables, how to clean up the ends, make sure the ends aren't boogered up with little metal shavings, all that fun stuff. So stay tuned for those. So in my opinion, this is a lot easier when you have spring tension on it. At this moment, I didn't have a cart in front of me that I could quickly do this with. And a gentleman asked me the other day, hey, how do you do this? So it's like, it prompted the video. It's like, I don't have that online yet. All right, so the retainer. Mikuni 28mm. You're going to notice there's a little tit sticking up. It's D-shaped. We already talked about the D-shape. D-shape. That little tit is going to go inside. Remember that groove I showed you earlier that the throttle cable goes in? That's going to go inside there. The D is going to match up. The tit is going to face up, out towards the carb, out. So tit towards the top. Tit towards the top right there. And sometimes it helps to have a little pair of pliers. The reason mine have a little piece of fuel line on these, I use these on my throttle cable. So if I fire up my shifter cart and I want it to idle, I just crimp this right in front of the throttle stop. Not the throttle stop, the cable housing stop on the chassis itself. It allows to have a little bit of tension. Then when I'm done warming it up, I just pull them off. Because most of our carts are set up not to idle. So back to the retainer. This is going to slide over our plastic cable holder inside. Tit up towards the top. So your cable housing, your throttle cable is going to go through the top, the spring, the retainer. And eventually it's going to end up inside the slide. So you want to drop it in. I don't know if you can see it in that video there. You drop it in. It is in the retainer. I'm confirming it's in the retainer. Oh, see, I'm going to drop it. Give me 1 second here. Okay, I'm going to do this a little differently. So I'm just pulling on the other end. You can't see it in the video right now. You want to make sure that retainer, tit, again, up. The tit faces up, and that tit has to line up with the groove inside the cable holder. So there you have it. Now, let me see here. Oh, you know what? I just talked about my cable holder. I'm going to use that on the other end. That'll make this a lot easier. You can tell a lot of these videos are just kind of on a whim. Like I said, a message came in yesterday. A gentleman was asking. So now there's a little bit of tension on there. That's going to make it a lot easier for me. Cap is off. 2 screws secure the top to the carburetor. 2 screws. SweetTech taught me a cool little trick. We used to convert these out, these little butter bolts. We converted them out to stainless steel Allen bolts. Made it a lot nicer. So, carb is there. Remove those 2 screws. Boom. You're going to have this assembly sitting in your hand. I'm right-handed. I'm going to take my right hand. I'm going to hold it back like that. Now, I'm going to jiggle. See how that retainer came out? Jiggling it, the retainer comes out. Now, if yours doesn't, most of the time it does not fall out that easy. However, I brake cleaned it ahead of time. So you can brake clean it to get the oil from the fuel off that retainer, and it'll fall out a lot quicker. So you just kind of wiggle it. And then you push down on the cable and out of that slot that I showed you earlier, and then lift everything up. So to put it in, exact opposite. Proper barrel, cable holder in. There you go. Now you're going to verify that the retainer inside is in fact in the groove and the tit is up. You're going to take your slide, two screws, secure the top. Again, this does not require monkey force, just probably only 1 or 2 foot-pounds of torque, or 12 inch-pounds. You want to verify the carb opens 100%. And there you have it, how to install or remove the throttle cable from a Mikuni 28mm carburetor. And when I get back from the races this weekend, I'll do another one on the Key-In. So thank you for watching. If you find these videos helpful, consider a donation to Norcal Karters. And if you do a donation, put a note in the donation on the next how-to video you'd like to see. Thank you, hit like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.